Good evening. Namaste. I welcome you all. Welcome to this VICHAR webinar. It's a weekly webinar series. It stands for Victorian Initiative for Community Harmony, Awareness and Resources. It's an initiative of FIAV, Federation of Indian Associations of Victoria. My name is Surya Soni. I'm former president and current trustee of FIAV and AICCT. This initiative brings in the diaspora together. We exchange our notes, we learn from each other, we support and grow together in this country where we are far away from our homeland. And today we have a great speaker, Dr. Surjeet Dhanji. Welcome. I'll briefly introduce you. Please add if I miss any critical things. So Dr. Surjeet Dhanji was the Director of Cultural Diplomacy at Australia-India Institute, and it is a Postdoctoral Honorary Fellow at the Asia Institute, University of Melbourne. Her research focuses on the Indian diaspora and immigration in Australia. Her recent publications include a working paper on the underrepresentation of Indian Australians in the 3 tiers of government working paper, Melbourne Asia Review, and a book chapter, Diaspora to the Rescue, the role of civil society groups in helping Indians stranded by the COVID-19 pandemic in transactional civil society in Asia. She also contributed to the role of the Indian diaspora in DFATS, an Indian economic strategy to 2035 report. Her current work includes collaborative research on how Asian international students have been coping during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite our vibrant cultural presence, Indian Australians remains underrepresented in all levels of government. Dr. Dhanji will explore what holds us back and what could drive us forward. With that note, I welcome you again, Dr. Surjeet, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Soniji, for inviting me to talk at the FIAV VICHAR. In fact, it is a VICHAR today on leadership as well. But first of all, let me start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the land on which I stand today. I pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and their emerging leaders. Today, I will be sharing my insights from my research on the Indian-Australian leadership and representation based in 2 of the major studies that I've conducted, one for the Australia-India Institute in 2024, a 2-year project, and another one for the Asia Institute in 2022, which was for a 3-year project. The latter one was funded by Asia Institute, and that was talking about the gap in the leadership of Indian diaspora in the 3 tiers of the government. While the Indian diaspora is growing rapidly and making major contributions, especially dependent on its size in Victoria, it remains noticeably underrepresented in political leadership across all levels of government, be it federal, state, or local. My research is supported by the papers that Soniji has already set out. I think one of them, which he didn't include, was Victoria's Perceptions on India and the Indian Diaspora, which I wrote with Dr. Karen Barker. This paper focused particularly on the Indian diaspora in Victoria, because as we all know, Victoria has the largest cohort of Indians living here. So, there are so many reports by DFAT as well. Of course, Soniji mentioned the economic strategy, Australia's Indian economic strategy to 2035, in which I contributed to chapter 18, which is on the Indian diaspora, its demography, its characteristics, and the government recognizes how wonderful it is and how it should be leveraged for bilateral trade relationships, people-to-people relationships, and cultural exchanges. And then in 2022, the DFAT produced another report, and this talks about the Indian diaspora being the national asset for Australia, a DFAT report. But despite all this recognition, Indian origin Australians still have minimum political visibility and few seats at decision-making tables. This matters because the Indian community is now one of the largest and fastest growing in Australia, especially in Victoria. For instance, in 2014, there were about 400,000 people of Indian heritage in Australia. In 2019, about 650,000. And in 2024, over 900,000. 2024. In 2025, I'm sure we're close to 1 million, making us 4% of the Australian population. In Victoria alone, there are 372,000 people with Indian ancestry, and Melbourne is the main hub. So the big question is, if the diaspora is seen as a key national and economic asset, why isn't this reflected in leadership? Why are Indian Australians not more visible in politics? So in the second half of my talk, I'll touch on cultural diplomacy, leveraging cultural diplomacy, and how Indian Australians are stepping up in community leadership, using soft power to build bridges, often outside of formal political spaces. So let's start at the beginning. As of mid-2024, more than 1/3 of the Australian population is born overseas. And they come from four main countries: England, India, China, and New Zealand. Among them, India stands out. It is now the top source country for skilled migrants, for entrepreneurs, researchers, and collaborators, and international students. The Indian community in Australia is certainly the most rapid growing. Let's look at their characteristics. Do they give us an insight into why we don't see them in leadership? This group is well educated, earns above average incomes, speaks English, comes from the world's largest democracy. They know how political systems work. Yet, despite ticking all the boxes to run for office, very few Indians are getting elected at the federal, state, or local levels. For these papers that I have produced, the reports papers, I have looked at the official data from the ABS, Bureau of Statistics, the electoral records. I interviewed candidates of Indian heritage, leaders of the community, Indian community, both the winners and the losers as well, and also Australian mainstream people who understand the diaspora. So let's look at the 2025 election, the federal election that has just ended. If you look at the results, only one person of Indian heritage, Leon Rubello, who belongs to the National Liberal Party in Queensland, was elected to the House of Representatives. Senator Varun Ghosh in Western Australia, the Labor he was replacing somebody, Dodson, I think. Zenetta Mascarenhas, she held on to her seat, but no Indian heritage MPs were elected either in Victoria, Tasmania, or South Australia. Candidates like Neil Dara for Labor, Ponraj for Greens, and Meera for Liberal ran, but they were not elected. Still, the campaign marks a step forward in visibility and engagement. Let's look at the state parliaments. New South Wales has 3 Indian heritage MPs, Daniel Mukhi, Gurmesh Singh, and Charishma. Victoria, Eden Foster holds a seat in Mulgrave of Indian descent. And Victoria has the largest diaspora, and yet we only have one person in the state parliament. Western Australia, 4 Indian heritage MPs, Krishnan, Yaz, Dr. Parvinder Kaur, who is one of the youngest elected leaders in government, in parliament. Queensland, no Indian heritage MPs currently serve. So the question is, despite being highly capable, fastest growing community, Indian Australians remain unrepresented in politics. Participation is growing, and so is the momentum for change. Let's look at comparatively how Indian communities are shaping politics around the world, a snapshot of 2025. When it comes to political power, Indian origin communities are making big waves in several Western countries, though, of course, the story varies country by country. Let's look at United States, for instance. America leads the way. It has a large Indian diaspora. In 2025, 6 Indian Americans are serving in the US Congress. In fact, the caucus is called the Samosa Caucus because of the Indian heritage people there. Big names like Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Ami Bera, and the newer faces like Subramaniam, and including the Vice President Kamala Harris, who unfortunately didn't make it, and Aruna Miller, who is the Lieutenant Governor for Maryland. They show that Indian heritage leaders are reaching the very top. Canada, of course, is not far behind. A record of 24 Indian origin members of parliament were elected in 2025, with 4 cabinet ministers appointed, including Anita Anand and Maninder Sidhu. Of course, much of this representation comes from the large and active Punjabi community. The United Kingdom is also impressive. After 2024, there are 29 Indian heritage MPs, including high-profile figures like Rishi Sunak. Very proud of it because his parents come from East Africa. Priti Kaur Gill, Tanmanjeet Singh Desi, Indian origin leaders in the UK. They hold powerful roles in major parties, showing their deep integration into British politics. Across the ditch, we come to New Zealand. In New Zealand, the presence is smaller, but still visible. Priyanka Radhakrishna from Labour and Paramjit Parmar, ACT Party, are currently in Parliament. The numbers have gone down currently. They have always had a higher number of Indian heritage people in Parliament. So you look at this big picture, Indian origin politicians are gaining real traction in Western democracies. The UK and Canada stand out with strong cabinet representation, while the US leads in high-level visibility, and New Zealand maintains a steady but smaller presence. I will come back to Australia soon. So overall, it is clear Indian communities are not just growing in numbers, they are increasingly stepping into leadership roles and shaping the future of their countries. We could say that these countries are the largest immigrant receiving countries, but even if you look at Europe, which is smaller in size, which doesn't have a colonial history of Indian diaspora, they too paint a picture where the Indian diaspora is active in leadership roles and political representation. Several European countries have seen rising political representation with people from Indian heritage. Look at Ireland, for instance. Leo Varadkar, of Indian descent, served as the Indian Heritage Prime Minister. Portugal, Antonio Costa of Goan origin, not only served as Prime Minister, but also was appointed as President of the European Council in 2024. A great accolade. Germany. I've never heard of Indian heritage people in Germany before, but Rahul Kumar Kamboj, a Frankfurt City parliamentarian, represented Germany at the United Nations Human Rights Council in 2025. Netherlands has the highest share of immigrant origin MPs, 19%, and there are many of Indian background. These are just a sampling of, what is happening. These figures highlight the growing political visibility of the Indian diaspora, even in Europe. So apart from the big immigrant receiving countries, even the smaller countries in Europe are showing signs of the diaspora. So now we come back to Australia. As of the mid-2020s, there have been few Indian heritage ministers in Australian federal cabinets, though representation at the parliament level is increasing. So we could say okay, let's look at other, we're good businessmen, we're good business people. Maybe looking at corporate leadership might throw some light. So if you look at the corporate leadership, Indian origin CEOs take a lead around the world globally. Let's take a quick trip around the world, like in America or the corporate world from Silicon Valley to Sydney. Some of the Indian background CEOs are running some of the biggest companies around the globe. United States, of course, is no surprise. 60 Indian origin CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies. Powerhouses like Satya Nadella in Microsoft, Pichai in Google, Narayan in Adobe, Subramanian in FedEx, Rangan in HubSpot, and I think I missed out MasterCard, Mr. Singh there. It just shows how the Indian professionals have become a global force in global business. Look at Canada. I don't have the exact numbers, but the top ones are Prem Watsa, Fairfax Financial, Bharat Masrani, TD Bank, Sundarajan, Fairfax India. Here, the impact is in finance and investments. And in UK, for the first time, we have Leena Nair, who is the CEO of Chanel, the first Indian woman to head the brand, which is quite an achievement. Venkat is the CEO of Barclays. In the old days, all Indians wanted to bank with Barclays. That was the only bank because they trusted. We have Rathi, who's also in the Financial Conduct Authority in regulation of finance. And in the United Kingdom, these leaders are shaping industries from fashion to finance. Australia is not far behind, although we don't have lots of Indian origin CEOs hitting the ASX 100. We have Tarun Gupta of Stockland Property, Dayal for the Pact Group of Packaging, and Biswas Newcrest Mining. So in Australia, we can say that these companies are in property, sustainability, and mining. Of course, Australia is a mining nation. I don't have the number of Indian heritage CEOs in the top ASX 100, but in Diaspora in a 2023 event said that we have 25 Indian origin CEOs and directors from ASX listed companies. So indeed, the pipeline is growing. It's all not bad news. You look at the Indian Australian women in leadership. Few have reached the CEO level with some trailblazing women. They're making their mark. Mitu Bomak-Lange, mind-blowing films. She won an award for her cultural work. Mystery as a tech innovator for breast cancer. Upma Virdi for Chaiwali founder. Pradhan for event entrepreneur promoting fashion. However, not many women, Australian women, have Caucasian as well, and of Indian heritage. They haven't made the ASX 200 companies which are publicly identified. In short, Indian origin CEOs are slowly gaining ground in Australia. The leadership trend is clearly on the rise. Let me take you to another report, which I worked on. It was a 2-year project. It is the findings from the survey. It was the Victorians' perceptions on India and the Indian diaspora. What do the Victorians think about the Indian? It was a 2-year project and ongoing. And if you look at the findings from this report, which was launched by the Victorian state government, it focused on Victorian diaspora. However, it did also focus on other states, but my target group this time was Victoria because it has the largest cohort of Indians. Most Victorians have a positive view of both India and the Indian community in the state. They see Indian Australians as adding value to the economy, culture, and everyday life in Victoria. So what is going well? Look at their economic boosters. Victorians appreciate the role of Indian diaspora in areas like business, skilled work, and international trade. Definitely the leverage the government is looking for. Many see Indian Australians as hardworking and economically valuable. No doubt about cultural enrichment and cultural diplomacy, whether it's Diwali festivals, Bollywood or dance shows or spicy street food. Indian culture is seen as vibrant and worth celebrating. Many Victorians, they enjoy the interactions with the Indian community and definitely want to know more about India and the Indian diaspora. When it comes to social contributions, Indian Australians are recognized for their positive impact on community life, especially through public events and grassroots engagement. And here I'm also going to throw light on the contributions of the Indian diaspora during COVID, especially looking after people who were not able to help themselves, the elderly, the sick, and international students as well. They got together, food, langar, seva. There was a lot going on. Even medicines were being, delivered by the Indian diaspora, trying to stay within the 25-kilometer limitation that the government had imposed. All that was really recognized as part of the cultural exchanges and people-to-people support. What about the support for government links with India? There's strong support for the Victorian government to push to build trade and cultural ties with India. So what is missing? What needs to work? The findings of the report are that there is a lack of Indian Australian leaders. One area where the community is underrepresented is leadership. The Victorians noticed that there aren't many Indian origin people in high-profile roles, whether in politics, business, or public sector. In fact, not many known Indian Australian faces come to the Victorians' minds. While the community is seen positively overall, many Victorians can't name Indian Australian leaders. This suggests a visibility gap. The talent is there, but it is not always in the spotlight. So before I go to the, Soniji, you will tell me how much time I have, okay? If I'm running over time, let me know.
No, you have time, so please continue. Yeah.
So the question is, why aren't more Indian Australians in politics? Despite being one of the fastest growing communities in Australia, they're still underrepresented in politics and in leadership at all levels. Why is that? Let's break it down simply. You can argue that it is a newer community, unlike the US, Canada, and the UK, which have had long, especially the UK, which has had long political and cultural ties with India. Most Australians, the diaspora actually just started growing in the 1990s. I'm talking about the contemporary diaspora, yeah? So the first generation of migrants, they came in the 1970s, but the actual growth started in the 1990s. Unlike earlier migrant groups like the Greeks, Italians, or the Lebanese or even the Sri Lankans for that matter, who have had decades to establish political roots, the Indian community is still settling and building a base. We all know that our career priorities, a lot of you are parents here as well. Many Indian Australians are focused on business, medicine, IT, or engineering. They must become doctors, IT innovators, but not politics. Culturally, politics hasn't always been seen as an ideal career path, as there are still few Indian Australians who you can point out as political role models. There is also a generational shift. the first generation migrants often spend their time building a stable life. I know for myself that the first thing, we all have to look at roti, kapda, and makan, and, make sure that our children get a better education. That was the reason that we moved to a different country. The first generation lays the foundation. In fact, one FIAV chairperson in the past said, we laid the red carpet for all the other migrant groups up to come after us. And it is usually the second and the third generations who have the networks, the confidence, and understanding of the system to run for office. Then again, the next point is both the good thing is the bad thing, let's say, first is that geography doesn't help. It's because we're too spread out all around Victoria. We don't have a place that we can say, oh, this is like Chinatown. There, everybody's there, and we can look at the vote block. The good thing is that it's a good thing that we are socially integrated. We are spread out all over Victoria. We're not living in one particular, we don't have silos, we don't have ethnic communities where we don't just integrate with our own kind, we integrate with the general public. So that's a very good thing. But although Indian communities are mostly based in Melbourne and Sydney, they're spread across different electorates. This makes it harder for political parties to back a candidate in a safe seat with enough support to win. So here again, it's an anomaly. On the one hand, the government wants to promote people from the diaspora, but then at the same time, they're also saying, hey, you also got to bring your ethnic votes with you. But if you have integrated, why should you have to be relying on ethnic votes? Surely it's the mainstream vote bloc that should also be electing our leaders. The systemic problems also go further. Political parties, I feel, haven't done enough. They often treat the community symbolically with tokenism, visiting temples and attending festivals. But they don't invest seriously in grooming candidates for political standing. And when they do run somebody, it is often in a seat that they're unlikely to win. So if it's a safe Liberal seat, the Labour government will put some candidate as a token candidate to stand because they don't care, because they were never going to win it anyway. And political parties are also tight-knit circles. Indian origin Australians aren't part of these networks. They don't have the factional backing or the struggle to navigate the internal party politics, especially in Labour and the Greens. In fact, in my meeting with the minister, I'm using his words, he turned around and said, it's like mincemeat grinder. Even if you're part of it, you still don't know which part you belong to because things are always changing. And again, these party factions, they change so often. So it's a constant learning exercise. And I don't think the diaspora has got somebody in-house to train people to understand how do these factions work, how does pre-selection works. And they also have their internal workings themselves, which excludes ethnic communities. The system isn't always fair. Some candidates of Indian background, even those with strong local political support, are pushed aside in pre-selection and placed in unwinnable seats. Party power brokers often keep the real influence to themselves. I'll give you some examples on this. You will remember that Alex Batal, she stood for the Batman LGA. She'd been a member of that constituency, and the Greens won that for many, many times. And suddenly within the Green Party, they decided she was not going to be their candidate. They stood her down amidst mid-selection, mid election campaigning and brought in somebody else. Of course, they lost the seat, but Alex Batal was very bitter about it, and she left the Green Party. You look at Dr. Lisa Singh, my own employer at Australia India Institute. She'd won her constituency, her Senate seat, with a huge swing. And in the next election, she was placed on the bottom half of the electoral form, which didn't make any sense. Here is a winning candidate. Why have you shifted her further down? You look at Tarneet. We had Jaswinder Sidhu. He was elected, he was pre-selected to stand for the Labour Party in Tarneet. And then, of course, things went wrong. He got into a fracas, which part of it was politically designed to pull him down. And then they parachuted a candidate from New South Wales, somebody new, somebody who doesn't even know, hasn't lived in the LGA before, doesn't know what the community's needs are, and comes and starts from the start. I myself, in my own LGA, have a minister who has been flown in, who has not lived in the area, and who's, meeting the community and learning, what their needs are, what their preferences are, and what their concerns are. But, there's so much time lost. Why not just put a local candidate? I will go towards the latter part of my presentation. I will talk about Werribee, which will give us some insights. So the system isn't always fair. It's a systemic problem. Again, money and media matter. Running a campaign is expensive. Many Indian Australian candidates rely on their own savings. The government does give you a small stipend to do your photo shoot, your makeup and everything, and some posters and things like that. But after that, you're on your own. Indian candidates don't also have the same media exposure, PR support, or positive coverage that other candidates get. So when I was interviewing participants, some of the things, I'm going to quote their comments directly. One of them said to me, we're seen as good workers, but not as leaders. And another one said, media can make you or break you, and we don't always get a fair shot at the media coverage for Indian Australian candidates. So overall, when you look at the Indian communities in the US, Canada, UK, and even parts of Europe, they have more visibility in politics compared to Australia. Why? They have had more time, stronger networks, and more funding. That is not to say that in Australia we don't have wealthy Indian Australians, but it's still work in progress. So then you ask yourself the question, what needs to change? At the systemic level, we have to fix the imbalance. Parties must actively mentor and support the Indian Australian candidates. More funding and leadership programs should be created. On that matter, I know that the University of Melbourne has a program for women candidates who wish to stand. They train them for a whole year. There's the Emily's list as well. And I never see people of Indian background coming for training. I also don't see at the university level, some of the universities where I have checked, whether Indian heritage students, who are Australian citizens, whether they join the party clubs, the Labour Party, Students' Organisation, Liberal Party, Greens Party, or even independents. I don't see students joining there. In fact, if you look at the history of some of the MPs, great leaders in government, if you look at their trajectory, they are handpicked from the university. It is through their activism in these clubs that belong to the party. And we don't see a lot of Indian heritage people engaging there. So the bigger picture, the report, the 2-year report that I said about Victorian perceptions. Victorians appreciate the Indian diaspora's contribution to the economy and the culture, but agree that more inclusive political representation is overdue. If the Indian Australians are helping build the nation, surely they should have a seat at the table where decisions are made. That's one side of the equation. This is what our expectations are of the government. And, we can say, the Indian diaspora is there. It is a vibrant diaspora and culturally, economically, and socially. But, the government is not giving us they're not taking us on board seriously. But then let's ask the question, is the Indian diaspora helping itself? Let's be honest. We see it all the time. We pose for the photo. Politicians show up at temples, they wear a garland, smile for the camera, and then they leave. And then what? Where is the policy? Where is the follow-up? What is the Indian Australian community actually asking for beyond the photo op? I think we need to move from optics to action. The Indian diaspora is growing in numbers, wealth, and influence, but not in political power. Ask yourself why. Because sometimes we, the Indian diaspora, we settle for the symbolic gesture, the handshake of a Diwali event, the garland at a temple, the polite namaste in parliament, instead of demanding real representation, policy changes, and leadership roles. Let me give you an insight to a Diwali event I attended last year, and Bill Shorten, who was the MP for NDIS, was attending. So the organizer had a really good meal laid out. There was Karnataka dancing and singing and all of that. But the meal was neglected. Nobody was paying attention to the event, what was going on. There was a queue lining up just to have photos with Bill Shorten. So I laughingly told him, I said, I should charge you, because the caterer is now, his food is going to go wasted. But the interest in getting a photo was much greater than even attending to the event and the purpose. Then we look at the candidates. Who are they? Many candidates of Indian background do start off with good intentions. They volunteer in the MP's offices, they join their party branches, slowly learning the ropes. But again, the minister pointed out to me today, and it was also an insight that I have come across in my research, a lot of the people who intend to stand join the political parties only a few months before wanting to stand in position. There are other people who have been members, since they were 17 years of age. How are you going to compete with them? Just having joined 3-4 months before standing for an election. According to the community leaders and research interviews, a lot of recent candidates were unprepared to campaign seriously. Some couldn't even clearly explain their own political views or respond to public scrutiny. And that matters. One of the participants I interviewed says, a candidate needs more than ambition. They need people skills, calm confidence, and the ability to speak up for the community confidentially. Ultimately, what are the motives of these candidates who stand? Not all candidates are in it for public service. In fact, some people appear to run just to boost their business or social image, especially at the local council level. According to some diaspora members, standing for elections has also become a status symbol. And I will give you comments from one community member. He says, it's the cheapest way to get publicity. Some just want to show off back home in India that they're someone important in Australia. When you compare, back in India, it takes crores of rupees to earn political fame. Here, all you need is a party endorsement and some photos. The result? Business cards that read former council candidate, whether they won or not. So it is a publicity promotion, a self-promotion for them.
I'll interrupt for a second. If we can wrap up in 5 minutes, so then we can leave some time for question and answer. Thank you.
I'm very close to the end. Others also, members of the diaspora also say that we have quantity over quality. We had 129 Indian origin candidates just to run for the local elections, but very few won. Why? Because having a long list of candidates doesn't guarantee success. Without unity, mentoring, or shared agenda, it just dilutes the vote. So the diaspora needs, if it wants to build power, it needs leaders, not just candidates. It needs strategy, not just selfies. It needs unity, not just numbers. We can't just keep accepting garlands and photos as signs of success. It's time to set the agenda. When you come to the Werribee, we had two independent candidates, Indian Australians, Joshi and Ijaz. They both won. They were both independent. They did grassroots campaign. Werribee has a large Indian community, very nominal voting. In fact, they were at the bottom of the pack. What happened in the bigger picture? The by-election was triggered by long-time Tim Pellis, a Labour MP. He stepped down. Labour barely held on. John Lister scraped through with 51%, while Liberal candidate Steve Murphy was close behind at 49%. There was a big swing against the Labour, and it's usually Labour's safe seat. What does this mean for the Indian community? The Indian community did have Rajan Chopra. The Liberal Party considered running him for a candidate, and then it could have been a game changer. There was a big swing, but they chose not to run him, brought in a candidate who used to live in Werribee, but is now living in Essendon. And also the community support, I don't think was mobilized quite sufficiently. So the Werribee voting has shown us that we can have some influence. We did have a very big swing, even in a safe seat. And had they brought the Indian Liberal candidate, we might have had our first. It was so important that the Premier actually came to Werribee to give a speech, a talk to the Indian candidates, to talk to the Indian community, asking them to back Labour for all the policies, right policies and everything. It mattered so much. So Werribee is a really good example that if the diaspora gets behind, if the party gets behind, there is definitely a chance for Indian candidates to get into parliament, get into cabinet posts, political power and leadership, and have representation where it really matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dhanji. You've given so much insight, so much research of years of research you've done. You've summarized it so well for us. We've learned a lot, and you've given us lots of. I've taken lots of notes. I've taken lots of questions, but you were answering as we were going forward. So, in a nutshell, like you spoke about very diverse aspect of it, that it's not about the leadership itself, but about the politics, its own problems, and as well as the voters, how voters swing and things like that. So what's your nutshell approach? Would you still, as you were recommending the Veribee as a go-to place, for example, for candidates to winnability and all, are you suggesting that the brute force is the only way versus strategic approach in long run? Like, do mentors and leaders groom long run, long short, versus just if we have large population of voters in area is the only way to go forward?
I think Werribee was a really good template to work on in future. Rajan Chopra would have made a really good candidate. Again, at the pre-selection, there's the systemic problems with the parties. They chose to go for somebody who had been living in the area for a long time, even though Rajan Chopra has been, but they didn't have the confidence to go with somebody who was new. Despite him, and of course, he hasn't been a long-term member of the Liberal Party as well. So this is what I said, sometimes the motivations are good, but don't think last minute that I'm going to stand. It's not a short-term strategy. If you're going to stand in politics, you have to plan ahead and mobilize the forces and the resources and the social networks.
Yep. And also about that the Labour and Liberal party policy and agenda and all. It's a big switch coming from India, coming here, adapting to those thought
Yes.
process and how to call yourself a Labour, Liberal, or Green for that matter, or some independent, and it becomes a new uh, cultural shift, isn't it?
Yes, definitely so. This is why the first generation migrants, they don't actually, they're the foundation, they lay the red carpet, as one FIAV chairperson, past chairperson told me. And then it's the second, third generation that we're actually looking to because they understand it better. And they also have the courage to take on the challenge. They're not going to sit back and say, we're not good enough. Of course, we're good enough. Why not? We were born here.
Yep. I'll request audience to ask question. Raise your hand if yeah, Neeraj ji first, and then Abhijit ji and Sarvesh ji. Neeraj, you unmute. Oh, sorry, I have to. Yeah, help you unmute. Yeah, please do it now. Yeah.
Hello, Surjeet. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Neeraj. Thank you for
I
attending.
just made very short observation, a sort of a question. Though I don't agree with the Werribee assessment, uh, but that's I have a different intent. But I am not going into that. Uh, my first point is, and I will make it very fast so that others get a chance. My first point is that she made a very good this thing, and when these reports were launched, I was also there, and I did a lot of stories on this. And many years back, I wrote stories on this subject itself, how we can move ahead. Anyway, my first point is that Indian diaspora is not one diaspora. We
Yes,
should never forget that.
yes,
And I'll give you a recent example. Uh, Kerala, India's southernmost state health minister, was in Melbourne, and I found out of about 80, 90 people, only two North Indians there. No
yes,
Hindi speakers, nothing. And she also speaks all languages. So this is one example. So we are Kannada, we are Tamil, we are Punjabi, and hardly we are Indian. Indian we are as far as technically speaking, basically. But actually we are not Indian diaspora. We are a group of diaspora which is called Indian diaspora. Number two, there is lack of interest in mainstream Australia within the Indian community. In fact, very little. And more and more people, as Surjeet has pointed out, are Facebook politicians who put in photos, garlands, and count their likes and all that. And number three, my view is, and then as she has said, that we people have to take interest in socio-economic issues which affect Australia, and become political and become politicians. Then only they can move. Just by doing Facebook, they can't move ahead. And one more, this is my personal view. People can disagree. Too much diversion into religious and cultural ethos. If there is a temple program or a mosque program or a gurdwara, there will be thousands of people. But if you do a serious program, uh, there will be very. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
There will be very few people there, and I find very few Indians in serious issues. But there are some are there. And lastly, I must say that for Indian diaspora to be accepted in political parties, they have to work as politicians and not as Indians. And plus, these economic and social issues which affect every Australian also affects us. So we have to raise those issues and fight instead of just watching Indian television and so on and
So
talking about Bollywood. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to make a comment on two issues that you have raised. Um, The fragmentation of the Indian diaspora on language, north, south, and regional basis is both, it affects us both as being a heterogeneous diaspora, which is good. We bring diversity, but at the same time, the government actually uses it as an excuse. It says, oh, we don't know who the leaders are because the community is so fragmented. That's no excuse. We, the diaspora, need to have some solidarity and have some ethnic identity to say we are Australian Indians. Forget about being from the south or the north or whatever. And we don't have that yet. So we can't blame the government either. I think that's all I.
Some people don't like Hindi, some people don't like Tamil, and this and that. We all, and also there's one last point, and this is not an offense. Everybody doesn't speak English. That's not correct, actually, to say. People are not very good in English. They are good, and generally they can manage somehow. But English speaking is not a criteria. There are Greek people who have become MPs who didn't know English, And
Yes,
still you can become a member of parliament.
Yes, but I think the times have changed now. Even if you do the Australian citizenship test, English is a criteria. So things have shifted from, the old times. We
What I
definitely.
meant was that to get votes, you don't need English,
No,
basically.
no. Yeah, I
You
think
need
you
social
made your point.
networks.
Yeah. Thank you, Neeraj.
Please.
I'll switch to first Abhijit ji. Oh, no, sorry. Abhijit ji, you wanted to say something? Yeah, because you were unmute for long. Abhijit ji, you want to say something? Maybe not. Then with the screen name ADB, what's your name? Please introduce yourself and you can ask questions.
Apologies, I think that's the Zoom thing just picking up that.
Yeah, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Arun. I haven't been in Australia too long, probably 2.5 years, but and thank you very much for this discussion. The question that I have is, if we consider this movement as a startup and we tackle it as a startup and the challenges that startups face, where is that incubator, which is bringing all the people together? I mean, we can. Everybody's talking about what are the challenges. Yes, we understand what the challenges are, and they can be repeated often. But then, what is the solution? Where is that direction? Where is that umbrella where we will inculcate, give direction to the people who we want to launch into this arena?
Good question. Over to you, Surjeet ji. Yeah. Is there any recommended framework?
I like it that you come from STEM and then, you want an incubator. Definitely, I call it the pipeline. The pipeline is missing. We don't take enough. Like I said, at the university level, people from Indian heritage backgrounds are not joining the party students groups. That is the first thing. The incubation starts there. The incubation also starts within associations like FIAV. They also need to pick up people who they think are good future candidates who can stand in politics. So there's a lot of work to be done at the incubation level. In our report on the missing Indians, we did suggest that there should be the MPs, members of parliament, or the the leaders within certain electorates should engage students from universities to come and work and learn the understandings and the workings of politics. And yes, today when I went to meet with the minister, the two students who were working there were from one was from schools and one was from universities. So the incubation is taking place, but I think the community, the Indian diaspora itself, has to make more inroads itself.
No, I think the people will raise their hand, but where do we get the mentors? Where do we get the trainers?
We don't have a lot of people who, oops.
Oh, we can still hear you.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
yes.
Sorry. Just give me a minute. I'll just talk while my screen has gone blank. We do have mentors. We have mentors like Senator Lisa Singh. We have mentors like Dave Sharma. All the people who are already there. We should ask them to actually come out and talk to us, discuss. We don't invite them. We invite everybody. Look at the Diwali melas that take place.
Yeah.
You can get thousands and thousands of people. Why
Yeah.
don't
Well
we
said.
have a gathering of political leaders coming and talking about what the even FIAV should be actually inviting these political leaders of Indian heritage background and saying, tell us how you made it. What was it that you did? How I know Gurmesh and his family are fourth generation. So, they have been here for a long time, but there are others who are fairly new. But let's invite them. Let's not
I'll
wait.
I'll be happy to invite them. I'll need your recommendation and support there. I'll need your recommendation to invite them. Thank you. I'll move to next person, Sarvesh ji. Over to you.
Thanks, Surjeet ji. Same like Suriji, I think I have 4 pages of notes for today's presentation. Yeah, the talk, and there's so many insights were there, and I think any point that I was noting down, you just mentioning it in your talk. So one thing on the mentorship that I'm observing in our area. So many of like young kids, they are becoming part of the youth council. So there are so many youth councils in each councils.
Yes.
So, and so many Indian diaspora kids of second generation, like after the age of 12, 14, they are now entering from that stage. So that's the first stage I see in terms of mentoring, to entering into first to the local politics and understand what actually the governance is
Yes.
and how selfless it is. Like being Indian, we have to first understand the concept of selfless service.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, politics is not for money, politics is not for fame, politics is to serve.
Yes.
Yeah, and the second thing of mentoring question, I saw many local MPs, they are sending emails to all the school kids in their area to work with their offices. So like, so I live in South Morang, so Lily Ambrosius, she's from Epping area. So many of Indian diaspora kids are working with her in her office. And Vicky Ward in Eltham, so she also invites the school kids in the area to work with her to understand how the governance is, how the local MPs, what they do. So I think that is, they are also trying from their end as well to bring the Indian diaspora kids, because they know very well that these kids are smarter than the other local kids, and they are really good in English, better than the first generation parents, and they understand the facts much better. They are emotionally strong. We are not that emotionally strong. Like even I know, like our history, the kind of challenges and things that we have faced in our past, that still reflects in our behavior, and all the politicians know about us. Most
Yeah.
of the first generation Indians, the insecurities we have, the threats we have, and where we'll run away, where our adrenaline will work in the flight, not the fight
Yes. Yes.
mode. So, and on another note that I observed in specifically in my case, so I was the citizen of the year in the Vitalcy Council for this year, and it is a big council, around 250,000 people in this council, and not many Indian diaspora people are in our council. The ratio is comparatively much lesser than the Western councils. So it was a big thing that the local council considered a person from a first generation Indian to be considered a citizen of the year, being only 7 years in this council. The one thing that was very disappointing, that I found that all the local newspaper published the story, but I tagged all the Indian newspapers in my post or wherever I wanted to tell, but none of them published that story or didn't even consider. So what I would see from the support of the media part that you also mentioned, the media also should support the prospective candidates who can be put forward. Like I'm not saying I am the good prospective candidate, but same time, my story is motivating other 10 people in our council.
Yes.
People are coming to me and asking.
It has a ripple effect, and always get in touch with Neeraj Nandaji.
No, he's I think that was also tagged on my post. Sorry, Neeraj.
And I think we missed the role of the media, of the Indian media. We used to have 14 newspapers, and now we have hardly one or two left.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, this was very relevant topic, and happy to discuss offline as well.
Thank you so much, Sarvesh. Abhijit ji, over to you.
Ji.
Hello, Surjeet. It was very nice presentation.
Your audio is very
Uh,
faded. Abhijit, your audio is very breaking.
Can you
Maybe
hear me?
you can turn off your video for a minute while you're asking questions. You can turn it on back. That may help with the bandwidth.
Can you hear me properly now?
Yes, much better. Yeah, please ask your question.
Okay. Thank you, Surjeet ji. It was really nice presentation. You had done a good research. I want to add something. What is my observation I got in my last 2 years? That at first Indian community are in travel mode. They are behaving like they're tourists. They want to show that I'm in Australia. I am better than my Indian fufa, Indian brother. See, my house is like that. They're happy with this. That's why they go to festival. They show that, see, we are doing this, we are doing that. But if anyone wants to be in politics, he has to be very serious about everything, about his life, about Australian life. Here people are in that mood, that travel mood. So still they don't meet to white people also. They are very happy in their Indian community. If you are only in Indian community, you cannot politics. You have to understand at first Australia. What is Australia? They don't have any interest about Australia. They are only interest about Australian dollar. Frankly speaking, that is the thing. Other than I found few Punjabis who are doing really good social work, but that doesn't mean that that is politics. They're very much socially active. They do that seva, and that's why maybe some people take it. Like in my area, someone ticket. He also knew that he will not win. He was Liberal Party. I went to the election day to just cover everything, just to talk the volunteers. The volunteers from that Liberal Party told me that I know that he will not win, and that's why he got ticket from this area, because the in my area Red Party is like 90% vote they get. And that's why suddenly one Indian got ticket from Blue Party. So there is many things. Politics is not just for fun. So I feel that mentality should change.
Yep.
Still here people are only to earn money, to show their relatives in India that, see, we are better. My life is better than your
Yep.
life.
Got your point. Thank you. Thank you so much, Abhijit ji. Over to Arunji.
Oh, did I do that again? Sorry. No.
Oh, yeah. Anything you want to respond, Surjeet ji?
No, I was just thanking Abhijit for his comments. It's true, some of us do carry that Indian baggage still in Australia.
Actually, I do have a comment. When the Australian population increases by 500,000 in 2 years, and most of the people who are coming in are professionals, and a lot of them, as was pointed out, India is the largest exporter of professionals in Australia, then we sit back and we say this is going to be a 15 to 20-year program because the incubation starts at the school or the college level, then perhaps this is the view that we are taking is a very long-term view. When you want to solve a problem, you take a short-term view, a medium, and a long-term. What we are discussing, what I'm noticing here is only the long-term which is being discussed. कि incubation शुरू होगा तो चलो भाई ये तो अब अगले generation की बात है. But then there's a huge population which is coming in right now, all grown up professionals, not kids. They don't have the opportunity to get into school again and do this all over again. They don't get representation for the next 20 years. My mind says, but there has to be something else that we can do. In the meantime, yes, there's a long-term plan which will run it and take its own course.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely, that's the question.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very valid point that you have raised, and thanks for bringing it up. We're not saying that, it has to be at a STEM level, it has to be an incubation. That's why I use the term pipeline. The pipeline is already there. The training is ongoing. The mentoring is ongoing. And we talk about second generation. Some second generation people are 40, 50 years old. If you came in the 70s or the 60s, the second generation is older, wiser, and more settled in. So we're not looking at just younger people. They are
Middle age.
middle age. Yeah. You look at the cancer hospital. There is the top cancer oncologist is Professor Desai. And a lot of people who have probably don't even know he exists, but they are there. The visibility is not there. We ourselves, as the diaspora, we don't know who our movers and shakers are. That is something that we need to work on as well. We have the leadership, we have the talent, we have everything. We need the will.
Yep.
Suri
Thank
sir,
you.
one point for Sujit ji, just and 1 minute less than that don't you agree with me, Dr. Sujit, that to start off, people who are interested and should join a political party and start from the branch, and then
Yes.
their training will be the best training.
Yes.
You don't need a mentor actually.
Yes, yes. You have to learn the ropes of it. Starting with volunteering is a good start, but the motivation, the inclination has to be both for the self and for the nation and for the community, not for selfies, not for social media, not for Facebook.
Yep.
I'm very conscious of time. Any last questions from anybody? Any comments?
We should ask who is going to join the political party tomorrow.
I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sarvesh.
It was very informative session. And this is very different from my background, being a teacher and listening this. I think this which are now after Wednesday doing my classes, come back, have a dinner, and then say, okay, let's see what's new today. So it's like a very eye-opening. And it was like, as you said, that we never sometimes, like I never think of that I can do that. But every VICHAR, that 1 hour session gives us so much perspectives that we can do anything. It's only we have to take step forward. So thank you for the information. It's very encouraging.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Sarvesh.
Thanks.
And on the point of joining the political party, so we had one of the council candidates, so she got defeated in this September council elections. So I was just asking her, can you please let me know any contact in the party who supported you? And then she started responding, then stopped responding to me. Before that, she was talking to me nicely till I was praising her. And after that, when I was just asking what are the contacts, where to enter, where are your meetings, how to come into the eyes of the people of the political party, start working from them. Yeah, slowly, but they just stop the channels. So where to start with?
Australia doesn't have many political parties anyway, not very difficult also.
No, one more thing is he's right. Sarvesh Soni is right that if you want to do something and if somebody achieved that, and if you go and ask them how you did that, this is, I will say, because we are also Indian. I am also Indian. I think that quality, that not the quality, that bad thing, I might also have it. That if somebody come and approach us, how you did it, rather than explaining and sharing, we people try to cut our own people.
Yes, that's the mentoring I'm talking about.
That is a mental level. That's why we are blocking ourselves and our community to grow.
ये हमारी कमजोरी है, इस पर विचार
बहुत बड़ी कमजोरी है, बहुत बड़ी कमजोरी है। जैसे अगर मेरे पास बच्चे आ रहे हैं, रिजल्ट अच्छे आ रहे हैं, तो वो कभी भी किसी पेरेंट को जाके नहीं बताएंगे कि वी आर डूइंग देयर। सो इट्स द सेम थिंग। मैं भी कहीं ना कहीं कर ही होंगी यही, मैं दूसरों को नहीं कह रही, बिकॉज आई एम ऑल्सो इंडियन। मतलब पर ये है मेंटल ब्लॉकेज हम लोगों में।
yes
हम किसी को आगे बढ़ते, जैसे सोशल मीडिया में सब ग्रो हो रहे हैं, बट वो खाली वो दिखावे वाले हैं, और जो कर रहे हैं वो सामने नहीं आते।
Suri Saab, I have an idea. Why not introduce the three parties? I call them two and a half. All three parties on VICHAR, one by one, call their people and tell them.
Yep, that's next objective. Definitely guide me, and that's the whole idea. As Simaji said, this
Yes.
forum, VICHAR webinar forum, is to bring that wide knowledge embedded into
Yeah.
individuals in our community. And this was a long overdue feedback from the community that how do we interact with FIV? FIV being a federation organization, don't have individual membership. We always had organizational membership, and that there was a gap because we used to communicate to individual organization. That messaging didn't pass through to the individual community members. And this VICHAR webinar is bridging that gap to bring the community on the same forum and express their thoughts and ideas together. And I took it as a challenge to make it a weekly. It's a bit of a challenge to get new speaker every week, but with all your support, it's happening so well so far, and we will learn a lot from each other. And we are into long-term game into this.
I have a question, and probably just because that we're discussing this, is this the average participation every week on these?
It's a very odd time. It's an odd time, and yes, it's a 25 or so is the average
No, but
participation.
I'm asking. I'm joining in for the first time. Is this the average participation level?
Yes, but people watch it on the YouTube recording later. Got more.
True, I agree. But why would a politician come to you when you have double-digit participants?
Yep. Let's pause. Surjeet ji wanted to say something. Yeah.
No, change it. People will think.
Arunji, I will take that point. It's a very valid point. I think maybe we do a recording.
Sorry,
maybe
1 second.
with a politician, and then question and answer. However, I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, it'll come back.
Yeah. The question was that why would a party send out and spend that time for such a small audience?
Let me say two things. One is, first of all, Soniji, I applaud you for FIAV having taken this step, because in most of the associations are there as, fictional, notional entities who do not help the diaspora at all. So, I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Arunji, yes, my first question when Soniji approached me, I said 9 o'clock. It's nearly my bedtime. But let me also say at the same time, when I hold seminars at the university as well, if we get 10 people to come at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, for us, that is a good group. People are no longer coming in the large numbers that we used to pre-COVID. Things have changed. Life has changed.
No, I think who made that point? Was it Neeraj who was making a point that you announce a temple program and you get hordes of people coming in? I think the attempt should be to find out that sweet spot. What's in it for them? When you get to that point, and when you have that to offer, you will find the numbers increase, and then perhaps somebody would want to spend time with this forum, or probably 4 hours. There might be many. I
have a question to ask Arunji. I think we also got to look at the dinner time for the Australian population, the mainstream population. I eat at 6:30, so by 7:30 my dinner is over. But I know for a large number of the diasporas, they eat at 8:30 or 8 o'clock, sometimes even at 10 o'clock. So yes, we have to find that sweet spot.
Right.
Soniji, that's a challenge for you.
No, yeah, I am taking it, and I'm conscious because I need to bring that balance of continuity. I can confidently say I can do it every week, 9 p.m., no blocker. And I know, but if I change the time to 7 or 8, I may have to try it. I'm getting that feedback constantly, but I'll think about it. Thank you so much. Last question from Babuji, and then we'll try to wrap up. I'll unmute you. Oh, you're unmute. Yeah, Babuji, you had a question?
Yes. So Gigi, thank you so much for that overview. I thought it was very interesting that this large increase of numbers of people from India in Australia is in the last few years, which means these are people who are here on a work permit and who will wait for a while before they get a permanent residency, and hence able to participate in politics locally. So what they do, and it's very interesting, most people who get on the immigration ladder are people with university education. It's extraordinary. A third of this country born outside here, and many of them possibly have a university degree. So the quality of people would be extraordinary, should be. But when you meet the Indian immigrants here, as I have, you see that, for example, in Sydney, when I went to give a lecture myself, I had someone give me a card which said Telugu Desam Sydney, Telugu Desam being a South Indian political party. I said, are you guys standing for election here in this country? The guy said, no. Then I said, why do you have a political party here in Australia if you are not interested in Australian electoral politics? Chap said, oh, I didn't think of it. Basically, these are guys who, we know that in India, political parties cater to specific demographics, specific castes, specific interests.
Religion.
And religion. Unfortunately, these people want to play Indian politics here, and 1 million of Indian immigrants is a really good substratum on which to play this nasty politic. This is happening. I know that in Telugu land, there are 5 different political parties, and there are 5 different factions of the Telugu speakers in every city now. So they are in politics, but they are in Indian politics. And they have no real concept of what it means to be in politics. It's like cheering a football team. No community connection. They're not involved in anything. They live in their language ghettos. Ask them if they've eaten any food other than biryani. I don't think many will say yes. Their friend
Babuji.
circles. So they are in this very sadly isolated communities. There is a problem. And when you say politicians go to temples, it's a shame that politicians think that people of a community are found in a place of worship and nowhere else. Why Anthony Albanese or the previous Prime Minister had to go to temples, VHP meetings, wear VHP shawls, and do such things. So the idea of integrating people is not well and wisely implemented in this country. It's a failure. And this also means that the problems that the UK has faced, because UK politicians behaved exactly like this, will also come here. Not integrated, but isolated ghettos with political agendas, unconnected with Australia. This is my observation being a few years in this country.
Thank you so much.
And I agree with him.
But Babu, when we wear our religions and ethnic groups on our sleeves, then obviously...
Sorry, one person at a time.
This is what
we are wrapping it up. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't wait. Sorry.
So I would request Hemant Gokhleji to say a few words. You raised your hand earlier, and because thank you, Hemantji, for introducing Dr. Surjeetji for coming to this webinar. But your comments, please, Hemantji.
I'm glad that there are so many people who are there to listen to this sort of a topic. Because one thing we started in 1980 with this sort of an idea of getting people together and doing a number of things. But people are expert in writing down the constitutions. And there are a number of leaders here. That is, we don't run short of leaders. Our major problem is inside politics. That is, our own politics is very important. We bring down a number of problems from India or some other countries and like to discuss over here. But our own problems over here, first, Aboriginal people also. We don't want to participate in that one too. So there are a number of root issues that is one has to answer. That is the way the community is developing. That is important. That is, it is not evolving and it has not evolved. Even that is federation. That is, we don't see that is it is evolving. There is no proactive part. That is number of things that is we are facing now. That is, there are a number of organizations nowadays.
Yep. Thank you, Hemanji. So kind of you. And with that note, I would sincerely want to thank Dr. Surjeet Dhanji for your time and effort and for sharing your years of research. And you've summarized it so well. You've given us lots of direction pointers of the pipeline approach. And definitely it's a long game. And with your guidance and support, we'll grow together. And that's the motto of this VICHAR webinar. So please support, guide, will improve, will navigate, will grow from here as a community, as a whole. With that note, unless Surjeet ji, if any final comments to make, we can wrap it up.
Thank you so much. Definitely work has to be done on the pipeline. And I don't think we only have to invite the politicians. Let's invite those good CEOs as well, because there's always people who work behind the scenes as well, to make one person come into the cabinet, to come into the parliament. So let's look at the community as a whole. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And thank you everybody who has attended today.
And I've seen somebody that some good leaders, we're not talking about politics, we're talking about leaders. Good leaders will come for even there's one audience, they will come for their audience. So numbers should not matter, but people watch these recordings a lot after offline. And once I record, it's odd time, but I need to maintain the momentum. So with that thought, that will receive more upcoming speakers. And thank you so much all for staying up so late. Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Namaste.
Namaste. Bye.